Hello and welcome to Sound Librarian. I'm Stefan Schutz. Prince of Persia is another one of these franchises that's been going on for, seems like a million years. The original Prince of Persia was a very, very simple side-scrolling jumping game. The franchise has been reinvigorated several times. One of the major reboots of the franchise was with the release of the game Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Now, this was a big jump from a technology point of view for that game, and there were some really interesting gameplay features, design features, and control features, but there was also a really, really lovely method of presenting the narrative. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, because that's what's significant about Prince of Persia: Sands of Time and its audio.
Do you think I felt regret as I gazed upon the destruction we had wrought? Or at least humility at the speed with which a world can be transformed from a good world into a hell? If you think so, you are mistaken. For in that moment I thought of one thing only: the honor and glory I would bring my father by fighting like a warrior in my first battle.
I think Prince of Persia possibly started a whole new phase of the development within the game industry. I'm not 100% sure that it was necessarily the first, but it was certainly one of the early examples of the reboot phenomenon. And I'm not just talking about a sequel, I'm talking about where a game has basically been given whole new life. So the original Prince of Persia games were very old and were very, very simple graphics and usually just 2D platformers. So this is where the entire franchise has been brought back to life and given a reboot. And this is now a fairly common thing. We've seen it with things like Tomb Raider and other fairly significant titles. So I think Prince of Persia, if it's not the first of this sort of reboot concept, it's certainly one of the earlier examples. Now, I think also one of the reasons why this particular Prince of Persia, so out of the reboots, Prince of Persia 1 was by far the most highly regarded, is because this one also concentrated on the story. Now, that's not to detract from the really, really amazing control and the parkour and, you know, the quite fluid combat and other things that it had in it. Those are all very, very good. And in fact, the sort of the free running aspect of it is fantastic. It's a lot of fun and really adds so much to the game. But I don't think that so much is as important a contribution to the development of the game industry as the narrative element. So now in 2014, when I'm doing this review, storytelling and narrative are really being seen as a critical aspect of AAA games. It's now becoming expected. When people spend money on what are supposed to be the high quality games, in a lot of cases, there is an expectation that they will have a well-told story.
Many men that day sought to win honor and glory on the battlefield, that their king might say to them, as Khosrow said to Rustam, "You are the noblest of my warriors." From the moment my sword tasted blood, I knew this would not be my way. I would win my father's praise not by killing, but by being the first to find the Maharaja's treasure vault and the wonders within.
Now, Prince of Persia, again, may not have been the first game to have a story in it. In fact, most certainly wasn't the first game to have a story in it, but it was told very well. The whole aspect of this narration of you are being narrated to by the character that you are controlling, as though he is reliving this through your actions. And they've done it so beautifully. It's crafted so well.
No, that's not what happened. Let me begin again.
And here's the perfect example. I've just gone and done something silly and I've died. And the narrator is like, oh, no, that's not what happened. Let's have another look. So it really is very forgiving from the point of view of you don't even feel like when you've died that you've actually done something hugely wrong. It's more a case of like, no, that's not what I remember saying. It's something different. Let me tell you how the story really went. And so it's actually a pleasant sort of soft way of saying to the player, no, you didn't quite do that right. Let's have another think about it. Let's think about what really happened. And I think I've never seen this. Even in more recent games, I've never seen this done again to the same level of effect as it was done in Prince of Persia. It's done so elegantly. The voiceover work in this is really quite lovely. It's actually he's got a great voice. He's quite expressive in the way he describes what's going on. And so again, you've got this constant companion of the actual character that you are controlling. And I think this also allows for some interesting techniques in that it allows the game to explain things to you in a way, to explain things from a tutorial manner, or even give you hints that are not quite so blatantly obvious. In some cases, it feels a little bit overdone in some games where your character's standing there going, oh, I think I should walk over there. And they just sort of say it again and again before you've actually even had a chance to notice that perhaps you should be going over there. And this is the thing. I think Prince of Persia has done it in a more subtle way. And so here I finally work out what I have to do. I drop down, I move on. I've learnt that what I did before was a mistake, but I've been guided through it in a companionable way rather than a sort of, some games that feel a little bit sort of lectury in the way they do things. So what about the sound and music within Prince of Persia? Well, remember, this is on PlayStation 2. I believe it was also released on Xbox and quite probably PC. But in this particular case, it's on PlayStation 2, which I suspect would have been one of its primary platforms. And so there are very serious limitations as to what the PlayStation can cope with as far as the environment, the number of sounds, music, etc. But all the sound works and fits the bill. And especially when they've got all these slow motion and time-changing events. The sound helps support what's going on there, which, as I've said many times, is really what the sound should be doing. So you've got the sounds involved with your actual character are very, very important because they help ground the character. So I think really this game has some similarities to Infamous for me in that it's actually the most important sounds in the game are the sounds of the character. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways this is quite similar to Infamous in that the free running aspect is one of the most important things. This is really the key part of the gameplay. Yes, there is combat in this game, but this is not a combat game. It's effectively a kind of a puzzle game of get to where you need to get to. And so why I say that the character sounds are important is because the Foley, the sounds of the character are really, really important for giving that character a sense of weight and grounding them in the world. So you feel like the controls in this game are very fluid. Once you get used to it, you can spring around all over the place and you can do all sorts of interesting acrobatic stunts. But I think a lot of those stunts would lose so much of their impact if the sounds didn't support them. They really need to give you, they need to be convincing. Are you running along on the different surfaces? Are you jumping? Are you tumbling? Does your character feel like they have a real sort of weight to them? Perhaps there's not actual physics here, but the sounds go a long way to making you feel like you are controlling the character doing these things. And this is where sometimes I think people underestimate the importance of the sound design, because that really is the job of the sound design, is to convince the player that what they are doing is actually happening.
Wait, that's not what happened. I haven't told you.
So overall, I think what they've achieved here is one of the first really convincing approaches to the narrative, to presenting the narrative in a game situation. And everything to do with the presentation of the narrative is really, really relying on the strength of the audio within Prince of Persia.
I'm surprised that not more games have adopted this idea of the main character telling the story in that way. There are others that have done similar things, but Prince of Persia did it really, really elegantly. And it worked really nicely for this entire genre. So I would encourage you to have a look at Prince of Persia, if you can find a copy of it, just because of this storytelling method. I think it's worth having a look at, especially if you're into game design. I hope this has been interesting for you, and once again, thank you very much for watching.